Hello, my name's Dan Dodds. I'm the principal attorney of the Dodds Law Firm in Surprise, Arizona. Today I want to talk to you about a very important topic, and that's how to prevent your children from becoming the collateral damage during a divorce. And I'm going to shoot 3 videos on this. Part 1, which you're watching now, Part 2 and Part 3, where I'm going to share with you what I call rules that you should be very cognizant of and not violate if you want your children not to be the collateral damage of the disintegration of your marriage. So let's take a look at what the research would suggest occurs to children involved in their families involved in a divorce, and I'll go over what I call rule number 1. First of all, this isn't just my opinion. It's related based on what I've learned in 24 years of public education as a teacher, as a high school principal, and as a large district school superintendent for 14 years. I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of divorces and separations. Some children never missed a lick, and other children just went off the platform. We don't want your children going off the platform. So what does research tell us? Well, numerous studies have concluded that ongoing, escalating levels of conflict between parents produces significant and lasting problems for the parents' children. The last person that the parents want to see punished for their failure to maintain a healthy relationship, but that's what happens if you're not careful. So, rule number 1, shelter your children from the marital conflict. They shouldn't be present when discord is being discussed. They shouldn't hear the foul language. They shouldn't hear the threats, because they begin to internalize that. And they go, oh, well, that's the way you treat another little girl if you don't disagree with her. Or, well, that's how I do a little boy that I'm not too happy with. So stay out of their world in terms of introducing marital conflict issues into their world. There will be plenty of times in their life they're going to learn to deal with conflict. But as a youngster, that's the poorest place to learn it. Watching your parents become dysfunctional. So what's so bad if they see it? Well, let me give you some pointers on that. Statistically speaking, children that are in high conflict situations and they're very aware of what's going on, their lower academic achievement is what they gain. They drop from A students to C students. They drop from C students to D- students. Or worse yet, they become dysfunctional, they quit learning, and they become F students. Every year they miss in gaining more and more achievement, their classmates are getting ahead of them, and ahead of them, and ahead of them. And it's very difficult for them to catch up. They begin to develop an attitude, well, I'm just not good at math, or I'm just stupid, or whatever reason they can come up with why they're not being a good student. And a good student isn't necessarily straight A's, but it's not necessarily straight F's either. You see increased levels of behavioral problems. Sometimes they're short-term because they're hurt and they're reacting to things the same way they see their parents. In the classroom, on the playground, on their team sports. But some of them will go and get better on that, and others of them will continue that behavioral problems and sadly become criminals, many of them. We don't want that for our children. An inability to make necessary psychological adjustments. What am I talking about? Patience sometimes. You get mad with somebody, you don't go out and cold cock them, you don't slap them, you don't go to work on the meanest, nastiest, rotten things you can say about their adversary. So as parents, when we model that behavior, little Johnny and little Susie go, well, that's just the way you deal with it. And they never understand how to develop coping skills, or it's very much delayed. Children many times will develop increased negative views about themselves. That makes no sense to you and I as adults, but that's the truth. They begin to think, well, the reason mommy and daddy are fighting is my fault. If I hadn't have done this or that, mommy and daddy wouldn't be fighting. They will internalize it, and then they start having behavioral problems that you probably would have never seen exhibited. They develop more problematic relationships with other people as they get older, which leads to more frequent problems, greater problems, and it just magnifies itself. So we don't want that for our children. They have less educational success. They begin to develop an attitude, well, my classmates are smarter, they're handier than I am, they're more capable than I am, I'll just take the D and forget it. While their classmates begin to excel, they nosedive. We don't want that for our children. Interestingly enough, even though in our society we're seeing less and less people formally marry, but what you'll see statistically speaking is that children that come out and have internalized those and develop and begin to exhibit these kinds of problems often never marry. And they're on their fifth or sixth partner before they're 30 because they don't know how to adjust to a healthy relationship where there's give and there's take. So more of them will not marry, or they'll marry poorly. The other issue, and the last one I want to talk about, is those children that watch this experience lower levels of personal satisfaction with themselves and with their life partners that they're going to meet down the road. Well, when I don't think much about myself, and I don't think much about the person that I supposedly love, there's only one outcome to that, and it's not good. So I'm going to give you 7 rules, but number 1 on my list is, what is, but shelter your children from the marital conflict. Act like the adult, speak like the adult, and keep the roles of parent and being a child separate as they should be. You're not their friend. You may love them, but they're your children. And you just damage your relationship, and you damage those children when you start being their buddy because you figure they'll like you better than they like mom. Okay, there's part 1. I really encourage you to listen to part 2 and 3. I think you'll be well served, and make sure that your children do not become the collateral damage of a divorce.